A lot of confusion is happening around 20A-1-502.5 and causing certain things to be questioned, particularly whether or not it is requiring the Republican Party to only submit one candidate for the primary election. So let's break it down to what we have questions on. We have questions as to whether the code requires the political party to provide only one name to the primary election and require a political party to amend their bylaws. To focus on that question, let's remove the sections that don't relate for right now. Okay, now let's read it as how it applies. So why don't you read along with me? Except as provided in subsection 2 and 4, when a vacancy occurs in the office of the United States Representative, the governor shall, within 7 days after the day on which the vacancy occurs, issue a proclamation calling a special congressional election to fill the vacancy that for each qualified political party provides at least 21 days, but not more than 28 days, for the qualified political party to select one candidate using the convention process described in section 20A-9-407 as a candidate for the qualified political party, and for a member of the qualified political party to submit signatures to qualify as a candidate for the qualified political party using the signature gathering process described in section 20A-9-408. Now let's apply that section. According to the Utah Republican Party Constitution, Article 12, Section 2, the party nominates its candidates for partisan offices by nominating convention and primary elections. In other words, the primary election is included in the convention process. That is how the party selects its one candidate. Remember the word convention process? We read those before. Let's go back to the code. Where in the code does it say that party must send one name to the primary election? It doesn't, because that would violate the Constitution and infringe on the party's protected freedom of association rights to identify the people who form this association by preventing the party from promoting candidates at the crucial primary election juncture. This section of the code does not ask for the party to send one candidate to the primary election. It is simply providing a timeline for a party to conduct its nominating convention and for the candidates using the signature gathering process. The party has 28 days to hold convention, and the candidates using the signature gathering process have 28 days to gather signatures. Section 20A-9-407 is the section of code that describes how a candidate files a declaration of candidacy who is seeking nomination through the party convention process, which includes the nominating convention and the primary election. 20A-9-408 is the section of code that describes how a candidate files a declaration of candidacy who is seeking nomination through the signature gathering process. Because the party uses the primary election as part of its nominating convention, let's review the primary election provision code. Primary election provision relating to qualified political party, Section 2C, is the section that applies to the current situation because there is a primary election that will be held, and therefore the party bylaw of 60% would apply and two names should move forward. This section allows for the party to put one or more candidates that came from the nominating convention. Section 20A-9-407 is the section of code that describes how a candidate files a declaration of candidacy who is seeking nomination through the party convention process, which includes the nominating convention and the primary election. Section 20A-9-408 is the section of code that describes how a candidate files a declaration of candidacy who is seeking nomination through the signature gathering process. So if the party uses the primary election as part of the convention process, when should the primary election be held? Remember those words, except as provided in subsection 2? Subsection 2 allows the governor to set a date for a primary special congressional election or a general special congressional election on a date other than a date described in subsection 1A. He does not have to set a date for a primary election because that is part of the party's convention process within 28 days as described in 1E. If he issues a proclamation calling for a special session for the legislature to appropriate money, which he did. Wait, we are not done. There is still more to explain. In the governor's proclamation, it states the party shall submit to the lieutenant governor one name for the placement on the special congressional election primary ballot that the party selects using the convention process described in Utah Code section 28-9-407. You are probably thinking, well, that's it. That's what it means. But no, there is more. Remember the special session the governor called in order to set election dates on a different date? It was held on June 17th, and HB 2001 passed. And on line 183, it states, in relation to the special congressional election, the provisions of the election proclamation prevail over any conflicting statutory provision except the provisions of this section, section 20A-1-207, and section 20A-1-502.5. 20A-1-502.5 is the section we just reviewed and learned. Remember, we learned after the vacancy occurs, the governor is to allow the party to hold a convention and those gathering signatures some time. And that timeline was not less than 21 days, but not more than 28 days to complete those processes. We also learned that the primary election is part of the party convention process. And the primary election can be held at a date selected by the governor. Nowhere in this code does it mention that the party has to submit one name for the primary election. You probably still have some more questions. During the convention, the party had been told that they had to change their bylaws to become compliant with the law. This was from the misinterpretation of the law because the law does not require only one name for the primary election from the party. The new bylaw would not apply. Bylaw 2C would apply and two names should be submitted to the lieutenant governor's office. I do recommend that the new language added be rescinded during the next meeting. So how do we fix this? Rob Axon should submit two names by the lieutenant governor's office by 5:00 p.m. on July 5th, 2023. We are a party of law. We have a duty to see that it is applied correctly. We owe this to our members and to every Republican candidate that respects and trusts our caucus system. We must ensure that the party applies the correct bylaw and submits both names. As a member of the party's State Central Committee, which is the party's governing body, it is your duty to defend the party's caucus system. Please reach out to the party chair and vice chair and request that they follow our bylaws and submit both names.